All right, let's go to Friday night. We have Georgia State and UConn. UConn Huskies 7.5-point home favorites, 48.5 the total here in this game. UConn, clearly not a team we're ready to trust yet as favorites. And depending on what number you got, if you got 7 or better, you pushed or won with Rice. And if you got 6.5 or better with UConn, you won. But it was still right around the number. They got a 17-10 win over Rice. Remember, before that, when they were bigger favorites against Temple, they only won by 9. We'll have to see how this one plays out. But UConn, with they've got Nick Evers back at quarterback. Still only completed 9 passes on 24 attempts. The good news, the run game with Darrell Robinson worked, and that's the critical element moving forward. UConn has to have some semblance of run game because I don't think the quarterback is good enough to carry the team offensively by himself. And Georgia State has had problems stopping the run, so that does concern me a little bit here against UConn. But I'll say this about Georgia State. They made a quarterback change recently. They started the year with the Canadian Christian Veilleux as quarterback. He got benched against Marshall. Zach Gibson took over, and that's when Georgia State got back into the game against Marshall and ended up making it interesting, even though they fell 35-20. And then they went back to Gibson last week at quarterback against App State, and it was pretty much a game they could have won, Georgia State, but they fell short. They did cover, though, as 7.5-point dogs, 33-26 in that game. That's still a pretty weak defense. This total might be, if UConn can run the ball, this total might get up and over because if, again, UConn to be have success offensively, they've got to be able to run the ball. They might be able to, but Gibson has given Georgia State a shot in the arm, I think, from a quarterback standpoint. And I like the way the offense is, the trajectory of the offense since he's taken over. They've looked better. They've got definitely more of a downfield attack now as well with him at the quarterback spot. And it's clearly his job now. He's won it with the way he's played the last 2 weeks for the Panthers. I took plus 7.5, this same number with Georgia State last week, and I'm tempted to take him again here with 7 in the hook. C-Mac, what do you think?
I think it'll be close. Look, with Georgia State, I talked about one thing where I got to have a little bit smaller bet is App State had just killed them. But the game was close. They had to score a touchdown late 2-point conversion, and Georgia State still covered there. In the week before, the game got over, Babano, but the horrible run defense gave up that late touchdown to Marshall with, I don't know what it was.
It's terrible. How do you give that up against Marshall 2 weeks ago? I remember that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember because it cashed the over for me.
It cashed the over, but they didn't cover. And they were, yeah. And that's their problem here because UConn just does their offense here, Evers. It's very methodical. They're going to want to run it, and they will have success. And you hear at home, I think they win, but I really don't want to lay not 7 in the hook. This was under a touchdown. I could think about it. So I think the line's pretty sharp. I looked at the under, I don't know if there's a ton. If this was like 50-51, I'd like it a lot more, but there's a lot of 48.5s. There's a few 49s. That's just below for me because Georgia State, like I talked about, that defense could just give it up late. Because UConn, I don't know if they light it up here. Like their offense, like could they get in the 30s in this game? Maybe, but they've consistently, been in the 20s. Like shocking, I remember that game, the Buffalo game early on where they beat them down at home. But I worry something like that could happen. So I'm going to be off in this one. I don't blame the Georgia State. Well, that's 2 weeks. They probably should have covered. Don't. And then last week they sneak, they cover. I think this game could be close. So I don't mind it.